Homeless can happen to anybody. And then boom, everything's taken away. And how do you restart at that age all over again?
While researching the issue of homelessness in America, I was struck by how Long Beach has quietly become one of the places facing growing pressure, not just from rising housing costs, but also from the deepening fentanyl crisis spreading across California. Let's take a closer look in this documentary, and feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. Current situation of homelessness in Long Beach. The truth is, homelessness in this city has been getting worse since 2019, especially after COVID hit and everything started to shift. According to the 2024 point-in-time count, Long Beach recorded approximately 3,400 people experiencing homelessness, already showing a steady increase compared to previous years. By 2025, that number rose again to around 4,000 individuals, marking a noticeable uptick and confirming what many residents had already begun to feel on the streets, and it's believed to rise even much more this year. What's concerning is that this increase isn't coming from just one source. Across Los Angeles County, nearby areas have also seen similar patterns, with homelessness rising between 5 to 7% in some communities during the same period. And for a city like Long Beach, with a population of just under 500,000, these numbers are not small. They represent a growing pressure on every part of the system. Furthermore, Long Beach's ability to respond to this crisis remains limited. While the city has expanded temporary shelters and outreach programs, the number of people moving into permanent housing has not kept pace with the number falling into homelessness. Rental assistance programs exist, but they often reach only a fraction of those in need, leaving many families stuck in a fragile situation, one unexpected bill away from losing everything. This growing gap between what is needed and what is actually delivered reveals a deeper issue, one that goes beyond numbers and points directly to the limits of the current system. In addition, shelters across Long Beach have been operating at or near full capacity for extended periods, relying heavily on a mix of state funding, local budgets, and emergency allocations to keep services running. And while these efforts are often highlighted as progress, the reality on the ground tells a more complicated story. By 2026, demand continues to outpace supply. More individuals are entering the system than exiting it into permanent housing, creating a cycle that is difficult to break. Homelessness in Long Beach through 2025 and into 2026 has continued to rise, reflecting broader patterns seen across California, not like what Gavin Newsom has promised, I know. When it comes to the impact of substances on the homeless community, whether in Long Beach specifically or California as a whole, the situation is even much more awful. Let's talk about it. A city where substances and survival collide. Talking about homelessness in Long Beach in 2025 and into 2026, it becomes clear that life on the streets and substance use are deeply intertwined. Not coincidentally, but structurally. Over the past decade, the substances shaping this reality have changed. There was a time when alcohol, marijuana, and prescription opioids were the dominant factors, substances that, while damaging, often followed more familiar cycles of use and recovery within the community. Now, methamphetamine and fentanyl have taken hold, not because they appeared out of nowhere, but because they fit the system too well. They are cheaper to produce, easier to distribute, and far more potent at smaller doses. And that changes the entire dynamic. Because these are not just drugs, they amplify dependency and instability. And most importantly, they accelerate the breakdown of a person's ability to function within structures that require consistency, employment, housing, even basic daily routines. By 2025 and 2026, communities across LA, including Long Beach, are not simply facing a homelessness issue, they are facing a convergence. Local outreach workers in Long Beach often describe a pattern, almost like a feedback loop, where substance use destabilizes the mind, and that instability drives deeper isolation, which in turn reinforces dependence. This is not just a Long Beach phenomenon, it reflects a broader crisis shaping the reality of the homeless in America in 2025 and into 2026. What makes this city different is not the existence of the problem, but how visible it has become. Residents and business owners point to certain areas where public substance use is no longer rare, it is part of the daily landscape. Shelters have had to tighten security measures, not as a form of punishment, but as a response to the unpredictability that comes with high-potency stimulants and synthetic opioids. And in a system already under strain, this creates an additional barrier, making recovery not just a personal challenge, but a structural one. I know most people watching this video know that homeless people here take homelessness as a choice. But the question is, was it after or before being left on the streets that they chose to suffer so bad? Is it because enforcement has been too soft, or because treatment options are too few? Whatever the reason, ignoring the problem is no longer an option. Situation after COVID-19. How did the COVID-19 pandemic reshape homelessness in Long Beach? From early 2020 through 2022, the pandemic didn't create the problem, it accelerated what was already there, pushing thousands closer to the edge of housing instability. During this period, California received significant federal relief through programs like the CARES Act and the American Rescue Plan, with billions directed toward rental assistance and emergency housing support. At first, these interventions acted like a buffer, slowing down what could have been a rapid collapse. But by late 2022 and into 2023, that buffer began to thin. Funding became less accessible, programs scaled back, and the cost of living continued to rise. By 2025 and moving into 2026, the delayed effects became more visible across Long Beach. Rents climbed, wages struggled to keep pace, and many households that had been temporarily protected found themselves exposed once again. At the same time, job instability during and after the pandemic left lasting scars, especially for low-income workers and those in informal housing situations. And when you combine rising costs with fragile income, the outcome is almost predictable. Besides, Long Beach experienced a steady rise in homelessness through 2025 and into 2026, driven by the expiration of rental assistance, uneven job recovery, and a persistent shortage of affordable housing. This coastal city, often seen as a more accessible alternative to Los Angeles, began to mirror the same structural pressures, only more quietly. Local shelters and interim housing sites have repeatedly operated at or near capacity as more individuals seek stability in a system already stretched thin. By 2025, the number of people experiencing homelessness in Long Beach had climbed to around 3,595, with projections for 2026 continuing that upward trajectory. Outreach teams report a visible increase in people living in vehicles, tents, and informal encampments across different parts of the city. And when temporary encampments are cleared, the displacement doesn't solve the problem, it redistributes it. What lies beneath this trend is not just scarcity, but contrast. Long Beach is a city where luxury waterfront developments stand just miles away from people struggling to secure a single night of shelter. Before COVID, many residents were already living paycheck to paycheck. But once emergency protections ended, those with the least financial margin were the first to fall. Rents continued to rise, while wages remained largely unchanged, creating a widening gap between those who can absorb economic shocks and those who cannot. In educational terms, Long Beach's experience offers a warning. Temporary aid may stall disaster, but unless systemic gaps are closed, homelessness becomes persistent. And yet, when people fall through the cracks, evictions, job loss, pandemic trauma, the social consequences spread beyond individuals to affect whole neighborhoods. If the city wants to reverse course, it must invest both in emergency support and in expanding affordable housing stock, else the pattern seen in homeless in America remains deeply entrenched here as well. What happened after the war? So what happens after the war? Not on the battlefield, but back home in cities like Long Beach. When more than $11 billion is funneled into a distant conflict, that money doesn't just disappear into history. It moves through the system and reshapes it. And eventually it shows up in places most people don't expect, right? You begin to see it in rising fuel prices, transportation costs, in the price of food, of rent, of simply existing. You can start to see it clearly. Gas prices rising from $2.98 to $3.79 per gallon, while oil prices have surged by nearly 50%. Inflation doesn't announce itself loudly, it accumulates. Until one day, everything costs more and nothing feels stable anymore. And then there's taxation, because large-scale spending rarely exists without consequence. And the burden, more often than not, moves downward toward the average citizen, toward the working class. I don't know if Trump gives a freak about that or not. In a place like Long Beach, where thousands are already one paycheck away from losing housing, that pressure doesn't stay theoretical. You have families who were barely holding on in 2025, now facing higher rent in 2026. And here's where the system reveals something fundamental. Economic shocks do not affect everyone equally. For those with savings, assets, or multiple streams of income, rising costs are an inconvenience. But for those without that cushion, it's a different equation entirely. Because when the margin is already thin, even a small increase in cost can trigger a chain reaction. Missed rent, late payments, eviction notices, and eventually displacement. So does war directly cause homelessness? Not exactly, but it changes the conditions. It shifts the variables in a system already under stress. And when those variables move in the wrong direction, the outcome becomes increasingly predictable. By late 2026, what we may begin to see is not a sudden explosion, but a gradual expansion. More people entering homelessness than exiting it. More individuals falling through gaps that were already there, but now wider. And in that adjustment, some people were simply left behind. Social Security in Long Beach. When we talk about homelessness in Long Beach, one force often hides in plain sight: the fragile architecture of public assistance. In a city where thousands of people are experiencing homelessness, the need is not abstract. It is immediate, measurable, and deeply human. Programs like Social Security disability insurance and supplemental security income are meant to act like stabilizing gravity for people too ill or disabled to work. But in real life, that gravity can feel very far away. In 2025, the federal maximum SSI payment for one person is $967 a month, yet average rent in Long Beach is far higher than that, making stability feel almost theoretical. And then there's the machinery of access itself. Applications demand documents, medical records, appointments, follow-up, proof upon proof. For someone living outdoors, moving through crisis one day at a time, that process can become a maze with no visible exit. Even when other aid exists, such as county cash assistance or food benefits, those programs may ease hunger without solving the deeper equation: housing. So the real question is not whether help exists, it is whether help arrives before a person's health, dignity, and last margin of stability collapse. In the wider story of homeless in America, delay is not a bureaucratic detail. It is a force that changes lives. For Long Beach, reforming and simplifying access to public benefits could become a real turning point in reducing homelessness. From where I stand, this crisis is not some random misfortune drifting in from nowhere. It is what happens when political delay stretches on for years, when priorities lose contact with human reality. Leaders announce plans. They speak of affordable housing, stronger services, expanded treatment, but too often, those promises dissolve before they ever touch the sidewalk. And the streets keep telling their own version of the truth. Compassion matters. But compassion without accountability is not enough. A city cannot accept unsafe encampments, open public drug use, and visible stagnation as though this were some permanent condition of urban life. When a city tolerates those conditions, it fails everyone, both housed and unhoused. What is needed is coordinated action from city government, county systems, state agencies, and federal partners aimed not at symptoms alone, but at the deeper structure of the crisis. Too little housing, too little treatment, and public assistance systems that move too slowly when lives are already in free fall. Long Beach reflects the wider reality of homeless in America, but that truth cannot become an excuse for paralysis. This city has the institutions, the resources, and the human talent to alter its course. What it needs now is the will to act with clarity, urgency, and courage to protect public safety while restoring dignity to those still trying to rebuild a life. Long Beach's homelessness crisis is not the result of one failure, but of several forces colliding at once: addiction, rising housing costs, economic instability, and social support systems that too often respond too slowly. In recent years, the situation has become more visible and more severe, echoing the wider reality of homeless in America. The numbers are troubling, yes, but the deeper tragedy is that so much of this suffering is not inevitable. It grows in the space where action is delayed, where systems fracture, and where vulnerable people are left to absorb the force of that failure alone. With stronger leadership, smarter investment in affordable housing, and treatment programs people can actually reach, Long Beach could begin to change its trajectory. The question now is no longer whether the city can afford to act. It is whether it can afford the cost of standing still. Because every day of inaction deepens the crisis, weakens public trust, and increases the human toll over time. The way forward demands both compassion and resolve. A city willing to restore safety, protect dignity, and make recovery possible, not as an exception, but as a real path back into life.